Hey, 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 welcome back to Keys with the House Lady, where we discuss real estate, community, and lifestyle. Those are all topics that actually affect your real life. I'm your host, Estrella Carter, aka the House Lady. And today's episode is incredibly important, whether you're a buyer, seller, or fellow agent, because we're talking about something that's quietly becoming one of the biggest threats in real estate. And that is wire fraud, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. So today I am honored to be joined by Emily Zeid, a closing account executive with Burnet Title. She works directly in closings every day and has firsthand insight into how scams are evolving and how consumers can protect themselves. So, Emily, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with a quick intro and tell us about your role at Burnet Title and how long you've been in this business.
Well, hello, Estrella. I am thrilled to be on this podcast today with you. I am very excited to participate in House Lady business. My name is Emily Zeid, and I have been a closer for the last 25 years. I will never forget the day of my interview in 2001 because it was on 9/11, and that is a true story. I still showed up amongst all the chaos. Unsurprisingly, it was rescheduled for a few days later. During the last 25 years, I've been a closer, a vice president of a title company, a closing manager, and I've been at Burnet Title as a closer since the end of 2019. I came to Burnet Title because of the vast amount of experience the closing department had and still has, and because of our impressive exam team. Our exam team errs on the side of caution, which I love. I do think that this is a good industry to be a little conservative when it comes to disclosing items on a title commitment that could be a concern for a buyer. And that is what our exam team does. So if there is a stray sock on our property, on our legal description, it's going to show up on my commitment because we're going to make sure that the buyer is aware of any potential issues that could come up after they close so that they have time with their agent to rectify them prior to closing. So our policy seems to be disclose, disclose, disclose. And I love that. It is a little bit
Minnesota seems, and from my perspective too, as a realtor, it does. Minnesota seems like a big disclosure, consumer protection state. So that's a good thing. Sometimes people can find it frustrating, but we're just trying to protect people with their transactions and their information.
That's exactly it. And I do think sometimes people do get frustrated because we will have several requirements.
Yes.
But those are ultimately issued to prevent a lawsuit after closing because the buyer was not aware of something and maybe a seller did not properly disclose it. So our job as a title company, when we issue our title requirements, is also to make the buyer aware of any potential pitfalls. If we see that we make sure to disclose if we have an easement, if we have potential encroachment. We want those all to be out for the buyer and the buyer's agent to be aware of so that it can be handled prior to closing, or maybe that's fine with them. I'm certainly fine with a neighboring sock on my lot. I'm okay with that. I can handle it. But that way, I know what I'm getting into. I know that there is a dirty sock on my property.
Right. Excellent. Emily, we're hearing more about AI being used in scams. Can you explain how these fraudsters are now using technology like voice cloning or deepfake emails to trick people during closings?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're asking about it. This is an excellent topic to cover because it's a real hazard in the industry. So there are three avenues that fraudsters, in essence, seem to be attacking real estate transactions in Minnesota. What I'm hearing the most about in the industry are fraudsters who hijack emails and send them to buyers with fraudulent wire instructions. Typically, this does not happen directly through a title company or through a brokerage account. Both title companies and brokerages have significant firewalls in place to prevent this exact situation. But if those accounts are not used, they can be subject to external corruption. While I haven't, thankfully, personally encountered any wire fraud on any of my files, and I am not aware
Well, let me
of
give you
any
applause for
Burnet.
that.
We are real careful about informing our buyers about safety precautions so it doesn't happen. But what I have heard in the industry often involves real estate agents who forward wire instructions to their buyers using an unsecured and private email account, like a Gmail account, and not using their company provided email.
What if they purchase? What if they purchase Google Business? Because I just had a conversation with a realtor the other day, and I said, well, we have to be really careful because, and CB has firewalls, and then they said, well, I purchased Google Business because they have that extra firewall protection. Have you heard of that?
I haven't. And what
Okay.
I would say is whether or not they have additional firewall protection, if they are sending sensitive emails, it should always go through their broker's email.
Okay.
Because that way they have their broker behind them if
Okay.
there is an issue. If they are if they're sending documents and sensitive information out through a private email, I don't know if there is any liability they could have personally if that is hacked. I haven't heard of it, but I would stray on the side of caution. And additionally, also, one thing that's really important is really real estate agents, you should not be sending wire instructions out. That should be a situation, even though it may be tempting, because maybe your buyer hasn't received them, and maybe your buyer needs them right away. But you, as an agent, want to step out of that. You only want to facilitate the communication between the title company and between the buyer, but
Right.
you want nothing to do with being responsible for providing those wire instructions specifically for this reason. So that is what I have heard the most about in Minnesota. And the thing that happens is if those wire instructions go out from a private account and they are hacked by a fraudster and sent to the buyer, and the buyer does not call the title company directly to verify those instructions, then they remit funds via wire transfer, and you cannot cancel a wire transfer. It's the reason that title companies in Minnesota require that funds, usually above $1,000 or $2,000, are submitted via wire transfer or a cashier's check, because Minnesota state law requires that all funds transmitted for closing are good funds, meaning they cannot be canceled. And that would be a cashier's check or a wire transfer. Most title companies will accept both. At Burnet Title, we will take a cashier's check all day long for any amount. We feel it's the safest way to remit funds. But if we are sending wire instructions out, we're going to send them out via secure email, and we're going to request that the buyer call us on a phone number that is verified to our company to verify those wire instructions, or their financial advisor, whoever it is that's remitting the funds, should call and verify the wire instructions always to make sure that they have not been fraudulently accessed.
Okay. So why are real estate transactions such a prime target for this type of fraud? I mean, we know that's large sums of money, but it just seems just like we're getting so much of it. Getting real estate transactions are like high up there when it comes to these.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. And I think it really has to do for two reasons. One is the large sums of money. And the second reason is that it seems that it has been a fairly easy avenue for them to hack. And those things are all changing as people become more aware and are being more diligent and verifying these things. So hopefully it will edge out. But ultimately, until we get everybody on the same page to verify wire instructions, there is always still that possibility if somebody is remitting funds via wire. I also have heard about two other ways that fraudsters are sort of hacking into real estate transactions that I think are important to note.
Okay.
The second situation I have heard about, and this is something that we have heard about specifically in Minnesota, is when we have a fraudster impersonating a seller. So we've
Yes.
heard of this happening on vacant land transactions, or when the property is unoccupied. In these cases, the fraudster impersonates the seller or will claim to have a power of attorney for the seller and engage in either listing the property for sale with a real estate agent or hijack the property if it's already listed. So they're typically looking in these cases, those fraudsters, what you could note, what would be sort of a red flag, is they're typically looking for a quick closing. And if requested, would supply a fraudulent proof of ownership, which would be, for example, a fraudulent power of attorney that would have involved somebody impersonating a notary, or I can't believe there would be an actual notary who would notarize a fraudulent document. But it is possible that the fraudster could approach a notary and provide fraudulent documentation to have something, to have a power of attorney executed correctly. But one of the things that I think that agents can do up front is to request identification from their sellers. Maybe when you're doing the listing agreement, I'm going to go ahead and request your proof of signing authority, like a power of attorney, and your ID. And we are finding that these transactions are occurring in situations where real estate agents are not meeting in person with their sellers. So when a real estate agent has a listing with a seller that they have never met, and somebody that wasn't referred through the family, maybe somebody who just called or emailed and said, I want to do this, I can't, we can't do a Teams meeting, we can't do a FaceTime, we can't really see each other in person, that is a cause for concern.
Right. I can't imagine go ahead. You'll finish and then I'll comment because this is some good stuff.
The last item I wanted to mention, and this is something that I have not encountered, but I've heard about it from my agents. And this is when a property is listed for sale and a fraudster presents the property online for rent.
Yes.
And then suddenly we have somebody who has not seen the property in person, has not done a visit, but has remitted funds, likely over desperation because they really need to get this house, and sent wire transfer to somebody claiming to own the property and have it for rent. What I would recommend in this case is if an agent has an active listing out there, just Google the listing every couple of days just to make sure it's not showing up in some online forum for rent. And that, again, these are typically when these properties are unoccupied. So we're not seeing a lot of hacking or seller impersonation when the sellers are there. It's when maybe this is their second home and maybe they live in Florida, or maybe they're traveling for the next 6 months and somebody else is sort of working with the agent to sell the property. But those are the three big cases or situations that I have heard about as a title closer where people are committing fraud.
Yes, and I agree with you
awful
that this type of fraud is happening, because a few months ago, my cousin, they're looking to just renting a house until they can buy. And she was on Craigslist and she's like, this looks too good to be true. She's just like, this is a beautiful house and they only want $2,000 a month. And I'm like, send it to me. And she sent it to me. And of course I did a search and I see that it was listed. I contacted the listing agent and the listing agent was like horrified. She's just like, no. She's like, we are not renting this house out. And she's like, thank you for sharing this with me. She's like, if it's not one thing, it's another with these fraudsters. So yes. It is common.
I commend you for that. I think that that's just great, and I'm sure she was horrified. I think as more of these cases pop up, it will probably agents will probably get more used to maybe checking in to make sure that this is not an issue. listing it on Craigslist. Yep, I think that that's a huge red flag. No Craigslist properties. That's rough.
I know. I mean, I think for years, I think we've knew. I mean, I'm not trying to give Craigslist a bad name, but that was where I kind of was learning the first years ago where scammers were on Craigslist. So, so I'm always kind of just very cautious about. I don't even go on Craigslist anymore, anyways, because it was horrible with the scammers. But anyway, so what's the most common mistake people make when they receive wiring instructions?
Not calling to verify them. So that is the number one thing that they should be doing.
Okay.
Is all title companies, or I believe all title companies, certainly all the title companies I have worked at, as soon as we receive a file, we send correspondence out to the buyer with the contact information for their closing team. The buyer, if they receive wire instructions, which typically should be done via secure email, that is the number that they want to call to verify them. So this is a situation, unfortunately, where a buyer really does have to protect themselves as a buyer. We try to communicate this on every file so buyers are aware. It is useful if real estate agents are able to help sort of push this forward as well. And then there will come a time where all buyers will just know, because we've been doing it so long, that by no means would they ever submit a wire without verbally verifying the wire instructions.
Right.
I verbally verify wire instructions all day long. If I have commission wired out to Coldwell Banker, I call Coldwell Banker and verify the wire instructions before I even send those out, just to make sure what I have received is accurate, because we want our agents to get their monies. You guys work hard for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're always the last to get paid, too. Okay.
We're really trying to fix that.
Yeah, I know.
Fix that.
So let's talk about red flags. What are the top warning signs buyers and sellers, and even us agents, should never ignore?
I think the top red flag is unoccupied property with a seller who is out of town. So I think that is the number one thing that people should be aware of, is just making sure to vet the seller. I will tell you, because we have had fraudsters impersonating sellers, that a lot of title companies have set up verification processes at the beginning of a transaction to verify the seller's identity. That typically involves their electronically verifying their identity based on their social security number, phone number, and email address. And we are often able to supply that to the buyer's title company without involving the seller. If the buyer's title company is unable to verify the seller's identity with that information, then they will reach out to the seller to do so. At Burnet Title, we feel the most risky transactions right now are those on vacant land. So we have recently implemented the same procedure when we have a property that is vacant land. We are going to verify that seller's identity to make sure that they really exist and they really own this property.
Okay, wonderful. So let's talk a little bit more about prevention. What's the number one rule you want everyone listening today to remember?
That they will never receive a last-minute wiring change notice from Burnet Title.
Never?
Burnet Title, never.
Okay.
Burnet Title only has one account. So we are never going to send somebody, oh, hey, we changed our wire instructions. Different title companies have different accounts. Some title companies have several accounts. At Burnet, we only have one. And this is one of the reasons that we only have one, because we are able to tell all of our clients across the board, you will never, ever get a change in wire instructions, because there's nothing for us to change it to. So if you get an email saying that wire instructions have been changed, that you need to let us know about that right away. That is not correct. We also have set up emails where our signatures cannot be faked. They can't be copied. So we have security protocols in effect for the emails that we are sending out that prevent somebody from copying our signature and pretending to be us. The last thing I would mention is it's always relevant to take your cursor and hover over the sender's email address. My understanding is when those emails are hacked, oftentimes there's just the slightest deviation in the email address. So the return email address, instead of being Team Emily at BurnetTitle.com, maybe it would be Team Emily1.
Oh, okay.
That's correct. So that's one of the techniques that they are employing.
Wow, yeah, they're really kind of getting sophisticated and spoofing these emails and texts lately.
Yeah, they're really going all in. I mean, on the plus side, they're putting some work into it. So at least they're not quite as lazy as I previously have thought. It's one of the reasons that I think that real estate transactions are targeted, large amount of money, and there were opportunities so they could kind of lazily slide in and steal the money. Those opportunities are being every day shrunk down. So we're really doing a lot to stop that from happening in this industry.
So what can I do better as an agent on educating my clients about this and wire fraud?
Well, Estrella, you do everything perfectly.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if there's anything that you could do better, but
I've been scammed before in the past, so I'm very cautious. Like, even I get phone calls, I get emails. I'm always checking them. So I make it a best practice to really sit down with my clients when I go over like the contract paperwork, and then when I pull out the wire fraud form, then that's when we have that discussion. But I feel like now that I'm having this discussion with you, I'm able to offer them a little bit more information.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing I would sort of add to your routine, because that's excellent, and the best thing any agent can do is when they're meeting with their client is making sure that they know who their title company is, they know who their closing team is.
Okay.
And an agent, when you are signing a purchase agreement, can go ahead and provide those introductory items. For example, so I'm going to go ahead and send this title order in. This is the closing team I'm going to send it to. These are their direct lines if you have any questions. And you will be receiving correspondence from Burnet Title. And the emails you receive should come typically from Team Emily at BurnetTitle.com. In addition, I am a huge fan of when a listing agreement is signed or a purchase agreement is signed, of an agent obtaining a copy of the driver's license for your client. On a listing, it's not as big of a deal paperwork-wise, but that is good for fraud prevention. For a buyer, we often run into buyers who use nicknames, and then we have a purchase agreement that shows their nickname, and if we don't catch it soon enough, we'll have a deed that has a nickname and not their legal name. We need a legal first and last name. So it's beneficial to all parties if an agent is able to take a peek at their driver's license before submitting a purchase agreement, not only to verify that you have a valid driver's license, but that you have the right name when you're setting up a purchase agreement. So that's sort of a side. That's not really fraud prevention, but it's another reason why seeing a copy of a driver's license is really, really, really valid. And then I would do exactly what you're doing, which is go through the wire instruction information, the wire fraud, and make sure to let them know if they're closing with Burnet Title, by no means do they have to wire funds to closing. We do not see fraud with cashier's checks. And when we talk to our buyers, we always tell them we will accept a wire, but we feel that the safest way to remit funds is via a cashier's check. And I think if they go into the transaction sort of being prepared and knowing exactly who it is that's going to be reaching out to them, then title can take it from there. But it would be excellent if we have our buyers sort of prepped for this. And if our agents on those listings are able, if they're working with someone they haven't met, I would, if I were an agent, knowing that I'm not an agent, so I am not subjected to your very unique challenges. And there are challenges as an agent.
Never
I
ending.
would request always a face-to-face meeting, whether that's FaceTime or Teams or in person, for your own safety, for your own peace of mind, just making sure that you are talking to the person, you've seen the person that you're going to be representing in the transaction. Because if they don't want to do that, that's a red flag.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Well, wonderful. So there's a new major regulatory thing called FinCEN that's coming out March 1st, 2026. Can you explain what FinCEN is and why these new rules matter?
Yes, I sure can. And it really is a big deal. We apparently, parts of the country have been doing this in title for years, but this is brand new for title in Minnesota. And we are implementing our process in February. And indeed, across the board, any closings after March 1st that are all cash transactions where the buyer is vesting in title as either a trust or an LLC, and some finance transactions, which would be like private lenders or lenders who currently do not participate in FinCEN. And those are not going to be like your guaranteed rate affinity plus. Those are going to be private lenders. Those transactions, we are going to have the funds that they are bringing to close vetted. And that is something that we as a title company won't do, but we will have a vendor who will do that and report directly to the IRS. So FinCEN stands for Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and it's a bureau of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. It protects the financial system from money laundering. So this is really anti-money laundering regulations. They collect and analyze financial data to support law enforcement and national security. So what will happen starting March 1st is if we have a transaction that applies, which will be a cash transaction where the buyer is taking title as a trust or as an LLC, or the very rare and unusual situation where we have a lender that does not currently participate in FinCEN. What will happen is we will notify our vendor, and our vendor is going to send a questionnaire out to the buyers. The buyer will have to complete information to verify where the funds are coming from and who the beneficial party is. It could potentially require up to 111 individual data points. So it's a form they have to a form they have to complete. And I don't know if there's a situation where they're going to require all 111 individual data points. They just may require up to that amount, including the details on the beneficial owners, the controlling parties, and the origin of funds. The seller will also be affected in these transactions because the seller will also have to complete a form to verify, in essence, that they're not receiving funds that have been laundered, that there's not maybe setting up a transaction as a purchase transaction, but really it's because our buyer somehow owes funds to the seller that they're running through this purchase. In all of my career, I have never, ever been in a closing and been like, this is money laundering. So this has never really come up for me.
So it's interesting now that it's come up and then there's this regulation passing. Do you expect this new regulatory change to slow down closings?
I really hope it doesn't. And we're going to work very hard to make sure our buyers and the sellers are all aware of the requirements because they will have to complete this typically 5 days before closing is when this will go out. This portal will go out to the buyer and the seller. And we'll need to have our vendor approve the transaction for closing, meaning that they will have received the information and vetted it. And I don't think it has a long turn time because we only need to send it out 5 days before closing. But if it's not done, and if we don't get approval from our vendor to close the transaction, it will either delay or cancel the transaction. So yes, if it is not handled sort of immediately and responsibly by our buyers and sellers, it could end up delaying the transaction or canceling it, which is why we're spending a lot of time communicating these requirements because we have a lot of clients who are very uncomfortable supplying information. If we have a situation where a seller is unwilling to complete the information because they don't want to provide their private information, it will not close.
Oh, we don't like that.
That's right. And that's right. And this is across.
That's what I felt like when I heard that.
Yes. And this is across, and this is going to be across the entire state. So it doesn't matter. It's not something that they can pull from one title company and take to another title company because it's going to be the same situation. There are heavy fines and potential jail time that title companies could be subject to, as well as maybe potential other players in the transaction. But a title company is not going to run the risk of getting fines in excess of $100,000 or jail time on each occurrence to violate this. So this will be another situation where I think the best thing that can be done is if we have our agents prep our buyers and sellers at the time of executing that purchase agreement. Oh, I see you're a cash buyer and you want to take title as a trust. This is what we're going to run into. So if they're prepped by the time they get to us, and they are much less suspicious because they have heard the information first from their very trusted advocate, which is their real estate agent. So it is a bummer in the sense that I know that you as an agent, Estrella, and all of your listeners who are agents really have a lot of tasks, a lot of duties, a lot of diligence they already have to put into every transaction. This is something that I think we're going to have some growing pains for, but it will be beneficial to everybody if an agent is able to incorporate this in to the conversations they have with their clients. The ones that I anticipate being the most difficult will be those sellers who may have difficulty understanding why they have to complete this information just as a result of how the buyer is purchasing the property.
Okay. Well, I just love how proactive you guys are being over there at Burnet. I mean, it's not required until March 1st, but you said you're already starting next week, you guys are going to start implementing this?
Yes, we actually have already, our title commitments that are being issued now include the FinCEN regulations. So we've already put it in process. There is one other item to mention. We are still waiting to hear back from our vendor, but it will incur a fee. And it's not a title fee. It's nothing title's going to receive any part of, but the vendor does charge a fee for making this report and reporting it directly to the IRS, knowing that the report has to be filed within 30 days.
So the buyer pays the fee?
Closing. Yes, the buyer will pay a fee. I just don't know what the fee is yet. And I believe, I'm hoping, so I guess I don't know that I believe, but I'm hoping it's not a large fee. I think it will in essence be a processing fee. And I also wanted to mention that the vendor will be one that already is working with the IRS through FinCEN. They'll be FinCEN approved. And if we do have some older individuals or maybe some younger buyers and sellers who are just not great with technology. I know that I am constantly challenged by technology. There is a phone number that we can have a buyer call or a seller call if they are unable to complete the form through the portal, so that somebody at a FinCEN office can complete, or I guess maybe at our vendor's office, can complete the information for them directly for the portal. So if we have somebody who is unable to do it electronically, we will have a backup method for them.
Wow. Well, Emily, you have just a really wide bandwidth because this is a lot of information. So, I'm going to give you an applause for that one. So before we wrap up and to summarize, and I know we've mentioned prevention, but can you share the top 3 wire fraud prevention tips?
Yes. So the number one wire prevention tip is to always call your title company to verify wire instructions, and to not call the number in an email they received from unless it's maybe secured. But either way, I would always still go back to that previous correspondence they have received that has that title company's information in it, or they can just Google so that they have the number for the title company, the branch that they're working with. We want to make sure people are not calling the number on fraudulent wire instructions to verify it, because there's going to be a scammer who's going to be like, yeah, these are 100% correct. Please give me all of your dollars. Also, please add $100,000 or whatever it is they would say. So that's the number one thing. And then the last item is that wire instructions should be sent securely. The only time I don't send wire instructions securely is when I'm on the phone with my buyer right then, because sometimes it can be sort of a pain to get into our secure emails, and I can verify over the phone immediately the wire instructions with the buyer. Now, the buyer then may take those wire instructions and submit them to their financial institution. We have that happen often if they have a brokerage account, for example, and a great brokerage account person, I guess, a great financial planner, will always call us to verify the wire instructions, because a buyer typically is not able to forward a secure email or send an email securely to their financial planner. So bottom line, whoever it is that's remitting those funds should really verify that the account is correct. And that is the best practices and the safest way to go about it. Or item number 4, just use a cashier's check. We love a cashier's check.
Okay.
If you bypass the wire altogether, you don't have to worry about this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So where can listeners connect with you or Burnet Title if they want more information?
So listeners, I love a listener. You can give me a call anytime. I work out of the Highland Park office at Burnet Title. Our phone number at that office is 651-695-3400. And my email address for my team is teamemily@burnettitle.com. We have offices all over the metro and some offices up north as well. So we have a website. It's burnettitle.com, and it has a lot of excellent information there as well. A lot of fraud prevention tips, as well as an excellent calculator for a potential buyer or seller to get an idea of costs. And our seller net sheet is actually the best net sheet I have ever seen in my career. It's really, really quite accurate. So we have lots of resources available for buyers and sellers, and we are open to all calls. If anybody has any questions, anybody just maybe potentially looking at starting a transaction, We certainly are open to work with all buyers and sellers at any point in time. So I hope people don't hesitate to contact us. Burnet Title has been around for a long time. It's a really, really, really excellent company, and we really do pride ourselves on protecting buyers and sellers and agents and lenders as well. We want all of our transactions to be great transactions, so our agents continue to have referrals and lots of repeat business.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us and helping protect our community. So to everyone listening, well, first, I got to give you another applause. Okay. I have to give you your kudos. So to everyone listening, please share this episode with anyone buying or selling a home or property, and always verify wiring instructions. This could literally save someone's life savings. So in the meantime, I want to thank you for joining me on Keys with the House Lady. If you're thinking about buying, selling, investing, or just need a referral anywhere across the country or internationally, I got you through my referral network. Visit EstrellaCarter.com or call me at 651-338-4207. Talk to you next time, and keep living your best life.